Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Inventors Groups of America Inventors Online. Very excited to be the presenter, the speaker of the night. I've got a killer presentation for you guys, and I'm super honored to be back again giving a great presentation on artificial intelligence. This is a big one here. There's a lot to discuss and go over. I've got a bunch of slides to show you. It's going to be a little bit interactive as well for those of you who are at your computer. And yeah, with that said, Stephen, do you have a couple words you'd like to say before we start?
Well, thank you very much, Courtney. I just want to say, first of all, welcome back, Courtney. I think it's wonderful. We're so happy to have you back. You guys, Courtney has a great presentation for all of us today. I'm here because I want to learn new things too. And what's really great about tonight's presentation is Courtney's on the cutting edge of what's new, right? And she's always trying to make us better at inventing. And so I'm really happy to be here. I'm a fan. Courtney, I'm going to listen because I want to learn. So I'm going to let you take it from here. So thank you very much.
Perfect. Sounds good. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, excellent. So today's presentation is on ChatGPT, AI art, and the magical powers of artificial intelligence for product development. I will note before I jump over and ask you guys a couple questions, I will say that this background was generated by an AI art program called Crayon. I did type into the prompt cool geometric turquoise background, and it propagated a bunch of different ones. And so I picked one, and just to kickstart it off, you can see that the background image was created by AI. So before we get into it here, I've got a couple questions for the audience. Let me actually go ahead and just so I can see your guys's hands, raise your hand for those of you who are not in the car here. How many people have used ChatGPT? Specifically ChatGPT, raise your hand. Okay. Yep. Excellent. Okay, wonderful. And put those hands down. And then how many of you guys have used any type of AI art program, any type of image, photo, prompt, word to art image? Okay, yep. Excellent. Okay, and then raise your hand if you have not dealt with any kind of artificial intelligence stuff at all, like you're new to it, you want to get into it, keep those hands raised. Excellent. We've got a fair amount of a mixed group here. Wow. Awesome. Okay, that is really good to know. So you guys can put your hands down. With this presentation, this is more going to be a timeless presentation. So it's moving really, really fast. And it's going to be very hard to have a presentation in general when just in fact, I did this last month and I made about 15 changes to the presentation just from a month difference for the presentation. So it's going pretty fast for sure. And so I made this quite timeless. It's very extensive. At the very end, I'm going to have a little, have you never dealt with it before? How do you even start messing with this? There's going to be a lot of advanced conversations that we're going to be having in this presentation. So please wait till the end if you are totally new and want to just start and to not get too overwhelmed with the material here. I spent probably over 50 hours worth of research into this presentation. As well as looked at a lot of different courses. And I will say there is a fair amount of information missing from those courses to just understand how the technology actually works. I made this very succinct, and so you can watch it again and again. And with that said, I will say that my philosophy personally is if you're going to use a tool, I think it's important to understand how it works so you can be efficient with it. And so you don't spend so much time trying to just make it work. We want to make sure this is not our next sticking point in the process. We want to be efficient with it. As all tools are, there is always good and bad. The internet is not good or bad. It's good and bad. So this is just one tool. There are many tools that we use. So with that said, I'll go ahead and start the presentation here. Okay, so for those of you who are not familiar, these are images that are created by AI, by artificial intelligence. A really good database is lexica.art. At any time, I'm going to bring up lots of different links. Feel free to pause as you're listening and go to any of these links. Lexica.art instead of .com is a phenomenal database, a website, which I'll show you in a second, where you can actually search for AI generated images. It's definitely the top database I have seen so far. And it's really phenomenal how artistic, creative, how detailed these images are. So there's many different ways we can use AI for product development. Just on the right, there's a couple different things that we can use it for. Art, images, we'll get into AI voiceovers for promo videos, for your products, for your sell sheets, an AI person speaking into a video, change your help creating copy with chat bots we'll get into, practicing conversations, getting familiar with phone calls and how to role play, get advice and solve problems. You can also make 3D models. However, they're still pretty in the early ages. If you guys are interested in that, I mentioned there's 4 down there. Katum and Point E are probably the most popular that I've found. It's still pretty early though. I wouldn't mess with it too much myself yet. It's just not there yet. And remember that these are creative tools that you can use as a creative. This is not replacing you. This is your next update, so to speak. And then also think about your pain points. So with that said, I'm going to show you guys a couple programs here. I'm going to bring up Crayon at first, and I'd recommend all of you guys, especially those of you who are not familiar with artificial intelligence, go to Crayon right now. Crayon, Craiyon. I'm going to see if I can bring this up a little bit bigger. This is what the website looks like. You don't need to create an account, so it's very easy to mess with already. Feel free to try this right now. I just have a prompt that I threw in there to show you guys what this program is made of. It's very quick. This is different in that it creates 9 images. Normally a program will create 1 image at a time. Sometimes it'll create up to 2 or 4. This is Crayon. It's on version 3 right now. So the prompt that I put in was beautiful exploding light bulb, comma, artistic. It usually takes about a minute to load these 9. And so I'll let that load for a second. You guys can see just with this one prompt, all I'm doing is just putting in a set of words, and then off of those words, it's going to go through a database, which I'll get into, to create images off of that prompt. With this version 3, it also created a section for negative words. So that means if you wanted a beautiful exploding light bulb artistic, but maybe you didn't want the light bulb to be red. Okay, so you can put in red light bulb there. Or maybe you don't want a black background. So maybe you put black background in that negative word space. And then it'll go ahead and make sure that whatever you put in the negative words is not there. So these are the images it came up with just off of that one prompt. That's a very simple prompt. I'd probably be a little bit more technical with that if I were to use that purposeful for business or whatnot. These are the ones that it came up with right off the bat. Obviously, it's pretty fast there. It took about a minute. You can always click on the different images to make them larger as well. This is a very basic, simple program that you guys can use for free without logging in. I really like this because it shows many variations very quickly and there's no fuss. You can just get into it right now and do it and play with it. You can't get quicker into the game than using Crayon. This is a good catcher. Like, wow, this is cool. I want to do more though. Can I get higher quality? Can I get, deal with different bots? Yes, absolutely. And this brings me to Lexica. Lexica is one of the ones that I use personally. It is very high quality. It is free. You get a certain amount of credits, which I will go into a little bit later. It also has a negative prompt there as well. It is also very quick and it shows 4 images. This is one of the most up-to-date high quality ones that you can get. So you can compare these, how much higher quality they are compared to Crayon. And they're also in a slightly different style as well. Like I said before, Lexica can also be used as a database. So I'm in Generate right now, but if you want to home, you could go ahead and search. It's a search engine for them. And you can always type in different things to see if people have already generated images. Here's some examples you can see real fast. Just off of text, it created these words or these images. And then the last thing that I'll show here is ChatGPT, which we're going to go ahead and get into a little bit later on in the presentation. This is not AI art. So there's 2 main points that we're going to come across today. There's going to be in relation to the images, the text to image based models, and then we're going from text to text. So this is the most popular one, ChatGPT. For those of you who are not familiar, I created a prompt at the bottom here to just give you guys an example of what it could come up with. My prompt is give me a very descriptive how to play instructions for a new award-winning board game involving skateboards and cats, including how many players, playtime, type of game, name of game, and exact in-depth game mechanics. Think about why this would not be a great game to play, and off of those answers, revise the gameplay to make it solve those problems. Let me go ahead and refresh that and then run that, and I'll show you guys what it came up with. I really enjoy making games and toys off of this because it's incredibly extensive. This is also a really good way to get into ChatGPT because you can see what it truly is capable of. Just thinking here, it's reading the description. It's going to put it out in a second. Actually, usually does not take that long. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and just let that run. And I'll show you guys one more thing as that's going, which is Agent GPT. This is a whole new thing as of March. And it's pretty phenomenal. I'm not going to get too into this because it's a whole other discussion, but just so you guys are aware of what the capabilities are, I typed in a name, marketing my brand, and goal. These are now goals. This is still a prompt, and this is still in the copy, text to text. The goal is come up with a marketing plan for a product licensing business where you pitch ideas to the world's largest companies and have a high success rate in getting licensing deals. What's cool about this is it goes ahead and gives itself tasks, trying to figure out what tasks that it needs to give off of your goal. So you can see here, I'll just show you the tasks and then we'll move on. The current task is analyze the industries and markets of the world's largest companies to identify potential licensing opportunities using data-driven insights and predictive modeling. That's the first task that it gave itself off of our goal. As it's doing that, next it's going to do the next task, develop personalized pitches for each identified opportunity, highlighting the unique benefits and value proposition of the licensing deal. And then the last one here is utilize natural language processing and sentiment analysis techniques to optimize the language and delivery of the pitch for each prospective client, increasing the likelihood of success. This is super new and quite wild. Sadly, this is still in beta mode, and you can easily just type in Agent GPT and mess with it, but it will eventually time itself out because it can only give you so much with this free mode here. Looks like that is still working, so we'll let that continue to work there as we move on with the presentation. So you can see just how quality these images are with just simple prompts through Lexica. All right, let's go ahead and get into it here. This is the wordiest part of the presentation. I'll just briefly explain a couple of these and you guys can feel free to go through it later on your own time. What is artificial intelligence? Making computers do things that traditionally require human intelligence to do. What is AI art? AI art is any art work, particularly images and musical compositions, created through the use of artificial intelligence programs such as text-to-image models and musical generators. So what I just showed you guys is AI art. This is text to image is what we're talking about here, which is when a user gives any caption or image on this tool, which is what I just did. And it will correspond your request to a vast collection of photograph databases that refer to various objects and landscapes as a form of vision data sets. Holy cow. So we're getting into the weeds here, talking about the actual definitions of all of these. And we'll get a little bit into generative models as well. Very, very fascinating how they work. We'll just briefly touch on it on the next slide of how stable diffusion works. So take a look at that. What's important about that is the data sets that they're trained on. So most often they're trained by a data set from a company called Lion. Laion. Very fascinating to look into that company as well. Of course, the bot is only as good as its data set. So data sets are incredibly important. Hugging face. So hugging face is not very important if you're not going to use Stable Diffusion on Google Colab. So this also gets a little bit technical. If you're new here, just kind of ignore this hugging face Google Colab space. If you're like, I want to get all in the know, I really want to understand how this works to the best of my ability, it's going to be important to create a free Hugging Face account because you need tokens to run Stable Diffusion on Google Colab, which is run on Google Drive. Yeah, tools that enable users to build, train, and deploy the models based on open source code and technologies. And we'll get down into Google Colab, which is a data analysis and machine learning tool that allows you to combine code along with charts, images, HTML into a single document stored in Google Drive. So again, if you guys are not familiar with Google Colab and Hugging Face and the AI world, you can just ignore that for now. Otherwise, if you're getting more advanced into it, that'll probably be your next step to run Stable Diffusion on your Google Colab through Google Drive. And then you will also need Discord as well if you're going to be running Midjourney, which we'll talk about in a second. The last thing I've got on here before we move on is what is ChatGPT, which is what it was running up there a second ago. It is Chat Generative Pre-trained Transformer, which there's going to be a quiz at the end here. I'm going to have to remember that acronym exactly. It's a natural language processing tool driven by AI technology that allows you to have human-like conversations. So now that we've got some of those definitions out of the way, let's talk a little bit about how it works. So we're going to just focus on the art right now. So there are 4 types of generative models. So you can see on the left there, there are 4 different versions. We're going to talk a little bit about diffusion models. So diffusion models are producing tools that enable users to create almost any image they can imagine. At a high level, diffusion models work by destroying training data by adding noise, which you can see here, original image, some noise added, noising process completed, and then learn to recover the data by reversing this noising process. Diffusion models can generate coherent images from noise. So diffusion models train by adding noise to images, which the model then learns how to remove. And then again, we got lay on there. So you can see it's created the noise process. Now from that noise image, it's going to try to recreate the image, and it's going to show different variations off of that through the noise generation. That is in and of itself how diffusion models work, by adding noise and then removing noise. Okay, so these are the most popular programs. The ones in bold are the ones that you guys will be most fascinated by because they are the ones that I use myself. So we're going to focus again on text to image models / programs. A lot of this development started in 2010, but of course it started to get popular in 2022. So I'm a big fan of open source. There's a big conversation there of like, what is open source and why is it good and bad? Open source allows the code to be available and to be freely used and edited to be made better and used in different ways by everyone. If something has open source code and you have the skills to manipulate the code, you are fully legally allowed to. This helps it get better and is incredibly important. I'm a big fan of open source code because it's up to us what we want to do with it. There are a lot of programs that are not open source. So for example, if you guys are familiar with DALL-E 2, that is not open source. Dream Studio is open source, and there's different ways that the images can be created. So I'll go through a couple of these here. Dream Studio uses Stable Diffusion. It is open source. DALL-E 2 uses diffusion and something else called Clip. It's not open source. Open source doesn't matter too much. If you guys don't know how to code and you're not going to like get into that, it's not that big of a deal, then yeah, it's probably not as relevant to you, except for the fact that programs that are not open source are most often going to be paid programs. Not always, but most often. So we want to start with a lot of the free programs first to see if this is something we even want to move forward with and continue messing with, and then so we can decide if we want to pay for a program. However, this technology is moving so incredibly fast that almost any program you go with at this point, free or paid, is going to be phenomenal. So in that respect, and in the respect of talking about open source, I would actually recommend trying a lot of different programs and not paying for it as much as you possibly can until you find a program you really, really enjoy. And even then so, because updates are constantly moving forward, hopefully it continues to get better, but I'd recommend trying not to get too focused on one particular program. I use Crayon definitely myself. It used to be called Dolly Mini. And it is open source. I also use Dream by Wombo, and you can tell what kind of method it uses. Again, it is open source. Midjourney is probably the most known and popular. It is a commercial diffusion model. You often have to pay for it, and it is not open source. I'm going to get a little bit into that later as well of why I actually don't use Midjourney myself. And then I also use Stable Diffusion on my own account, like I was talking about with Hugging Face and that whole deal to getting those tokens. I run my own bot on my own Google Drive through Google Colab. So that's why this is very cool of how we can just have our own bot very easily and be able to run it with the data set already combined with it. You don't have to deal with credits or anything for that matter. A lot of them you do, and then you have to pay for credits. Google Colab, you don't. And then there's Lexica Aperture, which is what I showed you guys before. It does use Stable Diffusion, and it is that search engine I was talking about. Okay, now that we've gotten to AI art, let's take a stroll through the text to text, which is we're going to focus on ChatGPT. So ChatGPT is one of the programs. There are many others, with one of the most common competitors being Bard, of course. There's also ChatSonic, Jasper, OpenAI Playground, and many, many more. This is what ChatGPT looks like here. And speaking of that, let's just check on our chat here. And it looks like it's still might be a little bit gun shy since we're, having a conversation here with so many people. And that's okay. I'll just refresh it. We'll come back to that yet again. So it is only trained by data through September 2021. So right now that's a big flaw where Bard is constantly active, but that Bard uses a very different system of getting its data. So we'll talk about that. It's a conversation. This is what blew my mind the most when I first started using ChatGPT. It is a conversation like a friend. It's going to remember what you said before. So if you said, give me 10 names for my business, and then you explain your business and it shows 10 names, then you can go ahead and say, okay, I liked number 3, number 7, and number 10. Can you combine those, but also add some type of, triangle to it? Okay, it's going to go ahead and do that. It's going to pull from that information it said before, and it's going to give you more names. You can keep running prompts from that conversation and continue it. It's going to remember that whole conversation, so it can pull data and keep it going. Where if you just use like Google and you type in a question, you're going to get a bunch of answers in Google as you scroll through Google. If you type in a new search term, it's going to have a new conversation, so to speak. This is one entire long conversation, and you get to start different conversations as you're going through ChatGPT. So there's lots of different ways that we can utilize it. You can ask it for help with motivation and lifestyle changes to help you be a more efficient product developer, help you find time, etc. Like we were saying before, you can practice phone calls. You can help it write your script for promo videos, which I use it for a lot myself now. You can help with your benefits, your OSBS, better copy. You can see there's many more there, prior art searching as well. Hit list, we'll get into those in a little bit later here too. And then other tasks as well that you normally outsource to a virtual assistant, you can have it do. And then different ways to make your product better, which I'll show you guys an example of it right here. So for those of you who are interested in how it works, I'm just going to leave this up for a good 10 seconds so you guys can come back to it in the recording. These are the 3 steps of how ChatGPT works and is trained. It's a really simple, easy way to understand it if you follow each of those 3 steps. And if you like this kind of example here, feel free to read through it and get a good understanding of this in the recording. ChatGPT versus Bard. So because Bard is becoming more popular, this is one of the things that I added recently, just from the past month of the presentation, adding in so much new stuff since I last did this. These are the big, most important differences with ChatGPT and Bard. I personally prefer ChatGPT. Now, this presentation, I'm going to give you a lot of my own personal opinions, and this is just strictly my own way of how I do it. So you always want to use critical thinking and think about what makes sense for you with what you're doing. Of course, ChatGPT was created by OpenAI. Bard was created by Google. They use very different language models. The biggest difference I've found is the data set that it's trained on. So ChatGPT only has data it's collected since September 2021. It's basically offline. It has that data. That's data that is ready to be used at any given time up until 2021. Where Bard takes ongoing data from the web. So it's kind of in a way connected to Google. It's constantly looking to help answer that question or that inquiry that you have. I would recommend using both and trying them, but I personally prefer using a ChatGPT. Of course, there's also biases and limitations, and we'll get into that. I have a whole slide talking about that, but you're always going to have biases no matter what, because data is always going to be biased, because the people who are putting in the data are humans, and humans are always going to be biased. So there's a bias of data with ChatGPT because it's off of data. And then, of course, bias of the internet, just in general of your query, what you're asking, it's going to give you a biased answer back. So let's talk about prompt writing. Prompt engineering is becoming the new major to get into. This is a whole new area. You can hire hundreds, probably thousands of people now just to help you prompt engineer. Think of it like this: good input, good output, garbage in, garbage out. The information that ChatGPT is going to give you is only as good as what you are giving it to feed off of. So if you got a really bad response, it's probably because you put in a really bad prompt. Now, again, there are lots of biases and limitations, absolutely. But most of the time, whatever you put in and you're like, wow, ChatGPT, I'm not such a fan of, like, that was a really bad answer. Take a look at your prompt. Let's see how good that prompt really was and redo it to see if we can make that answer a little bit better. There are lots of different conversations around prompt engineering. Holy cow, this is what I've learned from just the snippets of information that I could grab that were the most important that I found. It's best to write as if you are speaking to another person. It's good to ask open-ended questions. It's really excellent to include background information, as much information as you can provide it. About the context of what you're trying to ask. Of course, the response is proportional to the prompt here, like I just mentioned. Trying using colons, I'll show you an example here, was really helpful. So what am I doing? I want them to create a bird product. What is the goal? Well, I want the product to teach birds a larger vocabulary without me actually having to constantly repeat words to my parrot. The type, what type of product? A product that involves electronics, isn't too expensive to make, has fewer than 5 main components, and is smaller than a bread box. I thought I'd sneak that in there from 20 questions there. It can learn your style if you have one as a product developer. So here's an example. For this entire chat, only come up with product ideas that involve no electronics, are no larger than 5 inches by 5 inches, and could be easily sold for a large audience, such as consumers who shop at Walmart, Target, and Bed Bath & Beyond. And then I have a phenomenal video there that you guys can take a look at and type in, or take a photo of, or look at the recording for how to create good prompts there as well. It's also important to be very specific and make sure that the question you're asking is you believe is really going to generate a proper answer here that you are looking for. Let's see if we can run this again. Here we go. All right, so you guys remember the prompt that I initially put in. You guys can take a look at what it's coming up with. This was just that paragraph. I tried to be as specific as I could of exactly what I wanted it to do. And you guys can take a look at what it's creating. So the game is called Skate Cat. It's an action-packed board game that combines skateboarding and cats. The game is designed for 2 to 4 players, ages 8 and up. Let's scroll back up here. Average playtime of 30 minutes. To begin the game, players must choose a skateboard and a cat character card. Each cat has its own unique special ability that players can use during the game. It mentions an objective. It talks about what the game board would look like with various obstacles and challenges. It talks about game mechanics. It mentions, as I said, come up with issues of the game, and it did. make it not ideal for some players. For one, the game heavily relies on luck, as players must roll the dice to determine how far they can move on their turn. Additionally, some players may find the cat-themed aspect of the game to be unappealing. So to address these issues, hilarious, one possible revision to the game mechanics could be to include more opportunities for strategic decision-making, such as allowing players to choose which obstacles to tackle or which catnip tokens to collect. Additionally, it could be include different types of skateboarding tricks, which would add more variety to the gameplay and make it less reliant on luck. This is off of one prompt, you guys. One prompt, this whole entire thing. And remember, this is a conversation. So if I went and said, give me clear instructions on how to play the game. Now we'll stop it at here, but basically it's going to now give me a step-by-step where I could potentially play test it. And this is a conversation, so I don't need to redo the prompt and copy and paste everything it did. I just said, give me clear instructions, and it's going to read what it said. And it's going to go ahead and show you how to play it. This is really endless to your creativity. So let's say you go through this and you change a bunch of things, you figure out what you think makes sense, what doesn't, you figure out the gameplay you want, you put it in and say, okay, great, thank you very much. I edit it to this. Now, off of these new instructions that I created off of what ChatGPT created, let's say I love this, but skateboarding and cats, not a fan of. What if I just said, now make the game hat themed? And then, of course, it's going to do the entire thing over again. It looks like that was actually a pretty, oh yeah, here we go. Yeah, so hat themed version of Skate Cat. So now it's going to, I definitely needed to have a much better prompt than that. As you can see, some of this is still talking about some skateboarding stuff here. But obviously you can mess with themes and you can just continue going on and on. And it can be definitely addicting for sure. Go back to the presentation here. So now that you guys get a little bit more of a feel of ChatGPT and the capabilities of it, and we learned a little bit about prompt engineering, now let's go ahead and see some of the things that it came up with. So I tried that colon technique of what, goal, and type, and this is what it came up with. Which is a bird vocabulary trainer. This product could consist of, and then it talks about the 5 components that I asked it to only hit 5, talks about what it's made of, and then it talks about how it would work, the idea behind this device, and then you guys can take a look at that and see how it works off of that one concept it came up with. I took that and I said, great, now give me a list of 10 companies with links to the website that make bird products with electronics in them. So before even moving forward with the product, I'm going to see if there's even companies in this space. Birds are a niche, it's a small pet. It's in the small pet category. That's a very niche area. So is it even worth it to attempt something like that before even seeing like if those components make sense or if I should even do any development at all further? So it gave me 10 here. However, I found a flaw that was my fault. This is where I fell short. I casted too wide of a net. I should have said pet bird. You can see some of these companies here are talking about exotic birds. So this is definitely my mistake. I'm talking about parrots and pets for you to train with those who have particular language capabilities. A lot of wild birds do not. So it was already going to be an inaccurate example here. So what's interesting about this is it made me think of a whole nother area that I hadn't thought of. Could this product that I was envisioning for pet birds be possibly used for exotic birds? Is there another market that I hadn't thought of before because of that mistake? I've made so many mistakes with learning how to properly use ChatGPT that it's benefited me extensively, because if I didn't make those mistakes, I wouldn't have thought to consider casting a wider net, larger industries for the concept. So I learned through these, not only exotic birds, but some of these companies that I looked at, it talked about kids learning how to code by making a learning product for your bird. So already, just because of this mistake of not talking about a pet bird, I found 2 other categories that would enlarge in the space. Again, small pet is very small. Exotic and wild birds there's probably no market there either. But a STEM or a STEAM kit for kids, that is huge. That is a massive market. That is in the arts and crafts category, within the toy and game industry. That's a very, very large category. If I hadn't made that mistake, I wouldn't have seen how much larger this product could be used for by being open about the concept and by making this mistake. And you're going to always make mistakes with ChatGPT. No matter how skilled you are at it, there's always going to be holes that are going to be there because you're not talking with a human, you're talking with data sets. So then I ran it again, and I explained that it had the error, and it said, I apologize for the error in my previous response. I corrected it and said I'm talking about pet birds. And it came up with at least a better list at this point. Here's another example that I went through ChatGPT. The prompt was, give me an example of instructions for a card game you can play that involves players starting up their own restaurant that includes sabotage customers, a menu, decor, buying ingredients, and advertising of the restaurant. And of course, this is what it came up with, a pretty phenomenal example, just like we did, called Restaurant Rumble. You guys can take a look. It's basically what we just did of explaining the how to play. Of course, there's going to be a fair amount of elements here that don't make sense. So please, please do as much critical thinking as you possibly can. Anytime you run a prompt, whether it's art or whether it's text, you really, really want to make sure that you, one, have a really good prompt, and two, you don't just take what it's saying. You really think about, does it make sense for the game? Does it make sense for the product? And you really want to make sure you continue to add that human element into it. So that's one example of the hit list there, and coming up with a game. Let's talk about coming up with an idea. So first, I picked a category, pet products. I tried many different prompts that were specific. I told it to act like a type of person, as I told you guys before in the prompt engineering section. I chose to get more specific and said a dog instead of a pet. I told it to come up with many ideas. And then I tried regenerating the response, but found, that they were mostly electronic items. So I corrected it and said, I don't want electronic products. And you can see these are some concepts that it came up with off of me continuing to get deeper and deeper off of that particular prompt. So off of this, okay, great. I've got 5 here. And I spent some time with it. And you can see here, I changed it to that are not on the market. Okay, products that are not on the market, that don't involve electronics, that are simple yet creative ideas where you can play fetch and bond with your dog. So I continue to get more and more specific to get better and better ideas. I kept going and I found this one to be interesting. So I use this as our example. It's a Frisbee with built-in water bottle. It can be used to hydrate the dog during play. The Frisbee would be made from lightweight, durable materials and would have a comfortable grip for the human to hold. Pretty hilarious, for the human to hold, not for the person to hold. The water bottle would be detachable and easy to refill. Great, no electronics, decently simple product. Let's move forward with that and see what we can do with that concept. Then I started researching it. Does this product exist? Just because ChatGPT said it doesn't mean at all if it really does or does not exist. So then I paused and did my own market research. I took a look to see what was out there, and I found these 2 products, which were the closest to my product, but still, these are water toys, and it doesn't actually hold water for your dog to drink. So luckily, it was not out there. I thought it great, good enough to keep moving forward with. Did, of course, my own keyword search and patent search. And then I asked it questions deeper to see what it would come up with for market research. I asked, what is the closest product? And then it talked about a couple of them that are on the market and that aren't on the market anymore. So some I could not find. Remember, this is data from 2021. And then some of them were not similar. And then it continued to, I kept running the prompt to get what I was looking for, found these 2 products, couldn't find anything else, and went ahead and moved on. Now that I've created my concept, let's go ahead and create some images. So that's what's so cool about this, is you're using them both together. So we figured out what product we wanted to move forward with, to play with. Then we figured out, like, what is the product, like, make sure we understand what the concept is and it makes sense to mess with. Now, what the heck does this thing look like? Let's jump over to various programs where I'm going to show you guys the different ones that it created off of the different programs. I took originally what it said and I asked it to give me an example of a good prompt to use for an AI art program. So now that I've done that, I took that you can see right here and I edited it to make it a little bit better. And then I ran some photos in the programs, and then I continued to make it a better and better prompt. And I'll talk to you guys in a second of like how to really make those prompts really strong. Here are some of the images it came up with. So talking about my Stable Diffusion on my Google Colab on Google Drive, the whole hugging face thing I was talking about, these are the images that it came up with. You can see through Crayon, the program we were using before, these are the images it came up with from that. Of course, I ran the prompt a couple of times. Every single time you run the prompt from an AI art program, it will never give you the same photo again. We make that super clear. If you use the same prompt, so this prompt here, this one that I ended with, the Frisbee, this one here that I'm highlighting, if I take that prompt and I run it into Crayon and it propagates 9 images, and then I press run again, it will have different images. You will never get the same image ever again unless you add in the seed, which I'll explain what that is and how it works. We're getting an advanced, a deep dive here. So I messed with it a bunch of times. I tried different prompts, and then I came up with those two for Stable Diffusion and Crayon. Once you find a good art program you like, you don't necessarily need to run them with a bunch of different programs. I just wanted to show you guys the quality that it came up with when using Stable Diffusion and using Crayon, as well as these programs as well. I use Dream by Wombo a lot. Those are the ones that came up with, and you can choose different styles. So I ran one in HDR and then the next two in realistic. Those are my 2 favorite ones. Dream by Wombo you can use on the computer as well as download an app for. I also used a new one called Creative Fabrica Spark, and those are the images that it came up with as well. And then I went ahead and ran 2 more programs, Midjourney, which I'll get a little bit deeper into, and then Lexica, which is the one I showed you guys earlier, just these 3 on the bottom. I messed with the prompt a lot with Midjourney. These all 4 sets of images, all of these are all Midjourney created images. Midjourney is probably one of the best, if not currently the best detail-oriented AI art program there is out there. However, you only get so many credits, and you eventually run out of credits, and then you have to decide if you want to pay for it. It's also much harder to get up and running because the prompt engineering is done a little bit differently. It's harder. I probably generated far more images on Midjourney to just get these ones to look good compared to the other programs. This quality is way better. However, for you to really understand prompt engineering and how to properly do it with Midjourney, it's going to take you a while. So if you're serious about it, if you're going to embed this into your business, then go ahead and start learning how to use Midjourney. Elsewise, I'd recommend the other programs. Also, with that said, you are using Discord. For those of you who are familiar with Discord, it's a community, and it is public. So you have to use public Discord, which means any image you put out there is publicly disclosed, which is a problem for our industry. So you can pay, which I'm not sure is like, for like a good one, is like $40 to $60 a month to month, for having your own private Discord server to be able to run Midjourney on. So again, you can play with it. You can get a free account. You can use up your credits and mess with it, mess with things that aren't your products, because it's just going to go into the Discord server and it's going to be public. Amazing program. I personally, my own opinion is, though it's so high level, I still do not recommend it because it is not open source and it can get pretty pricey. So unless you're very, very serious about it and you're going to use it to truly revolutionize your business and also really deeply understand how to properly prompt engineer with Midjourney, I usually just don't recommend it. Okay, this I would say is probably the most important slide in the entire presentation, and this is the prompt guide. It's this took me a long time to find the proper information to show exactly how to create the best prompt. There's going to be so much more prompt engineering that's happening, and even then, so we're still in the very beginning stages of artificial intelligence. So this is also, I completely would assume, is going to change over time. You can see popular terms that you can just copy and paste and use at the end to make any image really nice. Like whatever your product is, once you do it, put ultra realistic or octane render or cinematic. They're all different technical terms which all mean certain things when you get into art creation with prompt engineering. So I won't go too into of what Unreal Engine is and ArtStation and whatnot, but feel free to take a look at those and try those within your prompts towards the end of it. There are 4 different parts of a prompt. You can see this is kind of the best example here in white, what's going on with those 4. You've got the content type, style, description, and composition. So here is the content type, a photograph. So content type frame, same thing. You can see here, this is the frame. Here are 4 different examples of keeping the exact same prompt, but just changing the frame. So this is an oil painting. This is a digital illustration. This one's hyper realistic, and that's cartoon. So if we kept like woman picking up a product in the grocery store, but in the front of it, we said an oil painting of a woman at the grocery store, and then tried a cartoon version of. So that's the first thing that you'll want to do. What type of style, a term there, because style is something different, but what type of feel are you looking for? And put that in as the first thing you put in your prompt. Second is the subject. So what do you actually, want an image of? Are we talking about your product? What type of photo do you want to generate? What is the actual context, the substance? So you can see examples here of a teddy bear on a playground. A teddy bear on a playground would be the subject. A style also goes into tone and the artist. So you could say in the style of Van Gogh. You can say like serious, moody, so you can mention someone like Van Gogh, or you can go ahead and mention a particular tone. And then the seed. Now this gets a little bit technical here, so we'll run past this a little bit quickly. I believe seed is going to be the thing that, in my personal opinion, what you will eventually be able to sell to people. I feel like this is going to end up being basically the important barcode, so to speak, off of a set of images that you propagate. So if you add in a seed from a recent prompt you created to keep similar pictures being reproduced with small prompt changes, such as these 4 seeds right here, if I just kept this seed, which you'd put in, it's a number, it's a long number, you can see kind of small there. If I said blue shoes with the rest of the prompt, it'll keep that exact same style, but just change the color. So let's say you like those angles, but it's orange. Like, you could take it in Photoshop and change the shoe from orange to blue, or just add in the seed and change the color to blue, or keep the same style and have someone's legs in it. So seeds are becoming very, very important, because remember, you can't reproduce an image ever again. You cannot produce the same AI image ever unless you have the seed. The seed is like the data set behind it. So seeds become incredibly important, especially when we're talking about intellectual property. This is an example of what Stable Diffusion looks like, again, on my Google Drive. You can see here, this is what it looks like. It might be a little bit small. This is a deeper look at seeds. Again, a good example of it is the code behind what you generated. So without copying the seed, a past seed, you will get a new image every single time, like I mentioned. If someone has the seed to your image, they can recreate your image. Otherwise, it can never be recreated. So think of it like the key. It's the key to that image. So we talked about negative prompting a little bit. These are sampling steps, which we can go into at the end if interested. It's how many it's going to be showing of it being generated as it's forming properly. It'll show you so many steps as it's forming. And there's the seed. You can see it down here. It's a bunch of numbers there. So let's see what it looks like when we keep the seed. I copied the seed and I kept it here. I changed the prompt. So here's the Frisbee in blue, a solid blue Frisbee with a thin middle transparent strip around it, etc. And you can see the different examples here of they all have very similar styles because we kept the seed for each one. So you can see there's the purple ones. You can see they're very similar to the blue ones. I ran another one as well of like a blue and gold one compared to like a red and gold one. You can see a lot of them have a similar feel to it. So if you love the image and you need small changes, you want to keep the seed, because as soon as you press regenerate, that seed is gone forever. And one more technical thing for you technical folks out there, a CFG scale. This information was very hard to come by, and of course, this presentation is incredibly extensive to make sure that if you guys are serious about using this tool in your future product development, that you do understand a CFG scale. So you can see there's a bunch of numbers here, and based on what number that you pick, it's changing what the image actually looks like. So it is the scale of 0 to 30. The higher the number, the higher the fidelity in matching the prompt. So it increases accuracy and realness, the higher the number, but also the higher the noise and lower the quality of image. So you can see 30, like, what even is that? Like, this is supposed to be a frisbee. Like, you can't even, it looks like a shell at this point, like a beach shell. And that's 30. That is 30 that are generated on the CFG scale, which is just a slider. You can type in the number for every image for almost all programs out there. The sweet spot is 7 to 11. If you're learning how to do this, just keep it at 7. 7 is a pretty good place to stay for now if you're not familiar with it. You can see this is a prompt that I created to create all of these different ones, and you can see that is I just skipped a couple of them to show you the different scale for it. So we'll quickly go through a couple of other capabilities of AI art. In painting is on the newer side. You can erase and apply an image inside an image. So you can see here, this woman here with the tan coat, this is the original image that I created. And these are just samples. I did not create these ones down here for in painting and out painting. You can see that just by changing the prompt using what is called in painting, you can change what she is wearing. Keep it exactly the same, just change it slightly. So let's say you have a product, a baby toy, and it's a circular ball. And you want to have like a weasel popping out of it, going up and down from it. Great, you take that ball, you use in painting, and then you say now add a weasel popping out of it. So it looks exactly the same. It's not like 20 different images that look kind of like a disfigured ball all across. You want to keep it the same so you can add different elements onto it. I feel like in painting is going to be pretty impressive and popular in our industry as time goes on. Out painting is quite the opposite. So instead of applying an image inside and erasing something, we're expanding outward from an image. So this is the original image here. So with out painting, look, you can see an entire room there just by using out painting and having it expand out of what could the room look like that they're actually in. And then there's image to image, which is editing an image that you upload. So this is my friend Sally. And this is where it got really popular with Lensa. For those of you who are familiar with Lensa, this is where the whole AI art fab kind of started with the app Lensa. Lensa does use Stable Diffusion as the model. And these are, you upload like 30 different images of yourself. Here are 2 images she uploaded, and then it'll remake like a headshot, so to speak, in different art styles. Limitations and biases. There's a lot here, and these are honestly just the most important ones that I think that are important for our industry that I should bring up. There is more to this. So the age of the database has been updated. This is for all artificial intelligence. It's only as good as its data set. And so with that said, a lot of it is old, like with ChatGPT. It's September 2021, so it's already pretty far behind. A face distortion, that's the biggest one. You can see here in Crayon, I ran a prompt. I'll make this a little bit bigger for you guys. You can see I was trying to render a stuffed animal. And you can see what the prompt is, and you can see if you look closely, some of the faces are a little bit mangled. There are some programs that are better for faces, but in general, it's better to Photoshop faces into it if you are going to create like a type of stuffed animal or something that has a face in it, like maybe a person using your product. You need to be a little bit careful with that. It looks a little bit disfigured. It can be a little bit off-putting as well. Text in photos, it's also really bad. You can see here that it's a Star Trek language here, a little bit unlegible. Those are not words at all. That's not a language. It's really bad at that. So you would need to, if you love that image, you would need to go ahead and find a way to remove that text and add something that you're looking for. ChatGPT, I would not recommend using it for facts. It's quite inaccurate at times, and it does have a bias. I love how they say this. It hallucinates facts. More and more, this is a term that is using heavier in AI, that it hallucinates facts. And then it has quite a lot of reasoning errors as well. Privacy is a big concern as well for what we do. So you always want it every program you use. If you're concerned about that, you should definitely read the terms of services for each program. Of course, again, as we were talking about Midjourney, it uses a public Discord server and is therefore public unless you pay for your own server. IP and ownership. There's a lot of conversations about that. Holy cow. Who owns these images? We make them. Do we actually own them? What is the deal with that? There's a big conversation around that, and I just took very, very small snippets of it here to kind of get a feel for it. Copyright law does not protect AI art, as the actual art isn't created by a human, so it cannot be protected as it, quote unquote, lacks the human authorship necessary to support a copyright claim. That is from the US Copyright Office. There's a phenomenal article. It's phenomenal about AI invention being rejected by every patent office globally. Someone was trying to protect something that was AI generated, and the article is amazing. So if you are fascinated about that area and can you patent something that an AI created, take a look at that link and you'll learn quite a lot about so far the one case study that made it pretty public. You can sell the AI art you create, which is pretty cool if you're in that kind of area of art, the artwork business. My personal guess is that seeds will be protectable in the future, and you will eventually be able to, because you are making the prompt. The prompt is created by a human. I believe eventually, my own guess here is that seeds will be protectable, and we will be able to put IP around seeds. WIPO uses, the World IP Organization, they use AI already. So if you guys are interested in WIPO and how they use it, there's a link there that you can check out about them talking about how they use artificial intelligence. And then when using it in a sell sheet or a slideshow, this is just, again, my personal opinion, is I like to have in small text in the footer of whatever I'm showing created with the help of AI. That is my own personal integrity that I find is important to write that on anything text-based or image-based when I'm using AI. It's up to you guys how you want to do your own work. I feel like it's important for me to be able to state that when I'm using artificial intelligence, when I'm sending it to companies. We use the same rights when placing AI art in your sell sheets as using Google Images via often at InventRight. We have a disclaimer that we recommend putting on a sell sheet that is about fair use. And we can absolutely use that disclaimer after lots of research and understanding this. Definitely not giving legal advice, everyone, but it looks like you can use a fair use regular disclaimer when you are using AI art. And there's the disclaimer down there. Just a couple more slides here. If you guys are fascinated in this realm, take a look at the other AI creative tools out there. There's Agent GPT that I was showing you guys about the tasks that it assigns itself. Also, feel free to take a look at Auto GPT, though I wouldn't go too deep into that unless you know some Python coding there. So I would stay away from that unless you already know how to code in Python. These are just some phenomenal examples of different programs out there. You can improve your resume and LinkedIn profile. All right, so there's a big deal there for our LinkedIn for using AI to help with that. Brand design, redesigning our workspace. I probably went through 150 different programs for you guys to figure out the ones that I thought were of interest to consider looking into for our industry. And that's just 150 of them that looked intriguing, and these are the ones here that I thought were of interest, except for this one. Of course, there's 56 different softwares in there. However, there's something called, I think it's later in here, called there is an AI for that.com. And there's, I think it's up to, I can't remember now, it's like 1,000 or 2,000 different AI programs. That is incredibly extensive. You can search through, it's a database of AI programs to sort through and figure out what you want to use. So this is not a small thing anymore, artificial intelligence. We're talking thousands and thousands of programs that do very specific and also broad things as well. This is the one testimonial that I found you guys can take a look at for the link about someone using game assets and it getting their game being published. This is sadly talking about a digital game. This is not a board game or a card game. This is like digital assets, like icons and stuff, a part of their electronic game that they have. And then those are two programs that help make videos. They're okay personally. I think videos, it still is taking some time to get good. What's really important about these creative tools is these are here to help you tap into your own creativity. Again, garbage in, garbage out. Think of each of these as a creative buddy that helps you. Critical thinking is critically important on how to best use them, and thinking through if the AI art or copy that you generated really does benefit what you are using it for, because often it doesn't. It's incredibly important that you look at all of that material that it's creating as you're giving it prompts to really think, does it truly make sense? Otherwise, you're going to be spinning your wheels for quite a long time trying to just assume that all of this is perfect for the game or whatever you're creating, and it just might not be. So just because it created it doesn't mean it makes sense. It's really important to think this through. And the last slide I've got for you guys is for all of you who are not advanced, for those of you who raised your hand at the very beginning and you have never dealt with AI, this is for you. Thanks for hanging in there through all that advanced talk. This is a quick start guide. If you guys are like, okay, yeah, I'm hooked. This is cool. I'm not sure if I'm going to use it. I'd like to try it and just see if I could benefit from it at all. This is my quick start guide that I would recommend messing with. I would recommend downloading the app Dream by Wombo. It is free. I would recommend playing with Crayon that you guys saw earlier and might have been on through this presentation. I would recommend creating an account with ChatGPT. That's for the copy. That's the text to text compared to text to art. I do sometimes, and you can try this if you want to use it as help for having a good blueprint or a mock-up for a virtual prototype artist. And unless you can create a really excellent image or have like really strong relationships with companies or are an experienced inventor, I don't usually recommend using the actual images on your sell sheet. What I use currently since last year of, I think, November, I've been messing with so many programs, and these are the programs that I use for when I need to use artificial intelligence. These are the exact programs that I go to. Again, I've gone through so many different programs. This is just my personal preference of what I've found. If I'm doing art on the computer, I use Crayon, Lexica, and then again, I run Stable Diffusion on my Google Drive. If I'm doing art on my phone, I use Dream by Wombo, also a program called Make AI Art in Pixo. If I'm creating copy on my computer, I use ChatGPT. And if I'm using copy on my phone, I use an app called Ask AI. If you guys are interested in learning more about resources in this area, I've got a bunch of different resources that I've cobbled together here for you guys to take a look at. And here's that database of thereisanaIforthat.com. Over 2,500 AI programs you guys can take a look at and see. You can categorize it and see if any of them are of interest there. And then a couple other things in relation to the future. This is my prediction. I think it's going to be hard to know what is real and what is fake. There are programs out there that are already starting to pop up where you can put in images and the program will tell you if it was AI generated or not. Shutterstock and Canva and other programs are now embedding AI because it's open source. Companies can just take it and utilize it. They're now embedded into their programs, like Canva and Shutterstock are already doing. I believe seeds will become very important. I think having things continue to be open source so everyone has the opportunity to paint the picture, so to speak, of what AI could look like for humans moving forward. I think that's incredibly important to continue to have programs open source as much as possible. That's going to level the playing field for everyone, whether you're a large company or if you're a single person. I would recommend to not spend hours on it. Remember, it is still one part of the process here of product development. Just like when I talked about augmented reality a bit ago at Inventors Groups of America, don't make this your next stuck at the prototype stage. You got to keep moving forward. These are just cool tools to use, but don't end up spending years messing with this and not making any movement. You have to get your products out there. So feel free to play with this and mess with this on the side, but don't use this as your sticking point. It may, of course, yes, it's possible it could take some jobs away, but that always happens with new technology when it comes out. Jobs being taken away is not unique to artificial intelligence. This happens every time. Think about the Industrial Revolution. This happens every time new technology comes out. So when you hear discussions about this, oh no, like my job's going away. Yes, it is a concern, of course. But that's also the case with all tools in general when they come out. So it's not unique to AI. I believe this, again, is your creative buddy that can help tap into your full creative potential faster. And to close, the last thing I'd like to say is so far I've had 3 conversations with 3 different companies in our industry to ask them their thoughts on artificial intelligence. I had a very large toy and game company. I'd love to say the name of them, but I can't. I have this conversation with. I had a baby company I talked to, and I had a pet company also. So 3 different categories. I asked them their thoughts on me showing concepts that have some form of artificial intelligence in it, whether I helped come up with benefits with ChatGPT, or there's some images there that are good inspiration to help them understand the style of the product. The toy and game company, I said we currently do not have a policy on it. And she was saying that in a way of, go ahead, like either way, like it doesn't really matter. Like we don't have, like, we're not against it. We're not like, please don't show it at all. So they were open to it. And both the pet and the baby company, both of them were like, yeah, it's really cool. I hope you mess with it to make your material better and more professional as an inventor. Remember, critical thinking. You don't have critical thinking, it's not going to come up with a good output there, garbage in, garbage out. You want to continue to be professional. And with that said, both the pet and the baby company were already using artificial intelligence in their own products. So they were like, sure, if it helps you, go for it. Like we're all for it. And they didn't necessarily have a policy either. But my biggest concern was that companies were not going to be open to when there's so much controversy with AI coming out, that they would say, no, we don't want to see any of that stuff. It's just, we don't want to deal with that because copyright. And if the data set is copyrighted of some sorts, then if we like your image and we produce a product, and then someone says that looks too similar to this AI image because the image was off of a data set that was copyrighted, that can be an IP nightmare. And so far, all 3 of those 3 small data set there, 3 companies did not have a policy, and all 3 of them were very open to looking at different concepts that used a word or copy AI as well as image AI. This is a little Easter egg here of this image of this inventor with the light bulb. This is an image that was created by, I believe it was by Dream by Wombo, the app. And this is AI's depiction of this one program and this one prompt of what an inventor looks like. I found that incredibly interesting and fascinating, but figured I'd just throw that up there as that final little kicker. So thank you very much, everyone, and I'll stop sharing here. Awesome. Yeah, good stuff. Super fun for sure. A lot of information, a lot of cobbling everything together. I really want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to be able to really understand what this technology is. Because once you have those bare bones, all like the seed talk and CFG scale, everything else is going to become very, very easy. And I found it very difficult for me to learn it, that there's so many resources everywhere that, again, I did over 50 hours of work just to understand how AI works. I think it's important to really understand those bare bones before you decide if you think it's worth it to move forward with something or not. Yeah, okay. With that said, Stephen, do you think we should answer a couple questions, see if there's anything of interest here? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you so much, Courtney, for that presentation. You know, it's a little overwhelming, right? It really is. I look at this and go, geez, where do I start with all this? And I know you've been involved in it, but I can tell you, I think all of us will find something that we find fascinating with it. And I'm using it really to come up with one-line benefit statements, with copy for articles, cleaning up maybe some of my writing. There's things that I'm using that I like. And I think all of us will find something they really kind of like with it. I think the big message here is this: nothing is going to replace your creativity. You know, there's a lot of talk about, you know, artificial intelligence, and what about that inventor? Can it be an inventor? Yeah, maybe yes, maybe no, but I can tell you this, that creative power that you have, that's yours and yours only. This is pulling stuff from the internet or pulling stuff from other data, right? And maybe turning it and twisting it, and might allow you to see something you wouldn't have seen otherwise. That's what I like about it. It's a tool, right? It's just like a paintbrush or, a piece of clay. It is a tool to play with, to really enhance your own creativity. So Courtney, thank you for doing such a great job with that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know, Stephen, we wanted to briefly mention about Invention Con and how it looks like it's going to be in May. So anyone interested in that, I'll just put a link to it, just as a
Yeah,
quick
put that
thing
link
there.
in. Please make Andrew a co-host. He asked for that too. You guys, the USPTO is doing a great job. In fact, they're doing more and more webinars. There's more classes. There's a lot of stuff for all of us to learn about using the tools at the USPTO. But the one thing they do, they have this annual event. And I think it's going to be, it's actually going to be in person this year, right, Courtney?
I believe so.
Okay. And that's really wonderful because we've been cooped up for way too long, everybody. So if you're in the area and you'd like to get together with other inventors, and if you've never even been to the USPTO, this might be a great chance for you to visit Invention Con and learn all the great tools at the USPTO. So check it out. I think you'll really enjoy it. I've been there a few times. I'd actually love it. In fact, I've been there for I think the first time was 20 years ago.
Oh, come on, Stephen. After Courtney's presentation, people are just going to be sitting at home all day long doing AI.
Well, that
Have
too.
time for
timing.
Invention Con.
That too.
Courtney,
So-
that was absolutely amazing. Do you guys want to do a group shot where if you all give a thumbs up and a wave, and I'll take a group shot here. So if you can give a thumbs up or wave, and I'll take a few pages. Here we go. Only take a sec. Keep those thumbs up, hands waving. Pages where people are live on video, and the rest of the pages people are live. I got it.
It's the family photograph.
Family
Great.
photo.
It is.
Brady Bunch photo. There you go.
I see a lot of old friends tonight. And I just want to call out a few people. Yes, I see some old friends. Edgar, I see there. Mark, I see you down there too. Great to see a lot of old friends. Of course, Celeste, all the way from South Africa. It's just wonderful to see everybody. I see George there and a lot of people. So thank you for coming out tonight and listening to Courtney. I think Courtney is amazing. Does everybody say the same thing? Yeah, yes, I would say that too. So do we have time for any questions, Courtney? Any time for that?
Yeah, there's a couple questions. Actually, not too many questions here.
Okay.
I just there's a couple things about have I used using AI art in relation to like cell sheets, like using the images just for that. Yes, I have. However, I'm very careful to only do that with companies where I have a long track record with them. I've been pitching them for 3-4 years, and they're not looking for that incredible nice finished cell sheet. I've done it for I think 3 of my cell sheets I've used it for, and again I'm being very selective with that because it's all new territory for a fair amount of these companies. It's good to kind of tread lightly with that. I don't know if I would really consider doing that unless you're like truly an experienced inventor who has a lot of relationships already built with the companies.
What you're saying, it might not look quite good enough for a cell sheet. So
Correct.
think twice about throwing something in there that looks really hokey.
Exactly.
Yeah. Courtney, a lot of questions about getting the replay. Some people join late. So it's going to be housed at the IGA website and on YouTube, right, Stephen?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So that's great. So look for that. I was going to say, hey, can you type your thank yous in for Courtney? But I don't think I
They're
need to.
coming
I
in.
think everybody already did.
I want to mention one thing, you guys. These webinars at IGA are really important to me, and I know they're probably important to everybody who's listening. But I want to have Courtney back on a new topic because she's doing something that's truly remarkable, right? She has some new strategies to build relationships with companies. And it's remarkable. She told me the other day what she's doing. And I love how Courtney takes a little bit of information here and just blows it up. So Courtney, would you come back and talk about how you're getting into companies, how you're building relationships, and how you're submitting more and more ideas now, because you're just on fire now. and you're exploding in a lot of different industries. So please come back. Everybody, wait for that announcement. We'll have Courtney back, and she's going to give you the latest techniques, tips, strategies. That's right, of how to get in to work with those companies. And because when I heard it the other day, I was like, she just took it to a whole nother level again.
And I don't know if Courtney, if any of your students are on the night, but Courtney is an absolutely phenomenal InventRight coach. You see the depth at which she cares to provide all the information, and I'm sure you dole it out in little bits for your students, Courtney, because this was a little overwhelming for somebody that I've just played around with ChatGPT. I haven't done any of the video stuff, but man, I'm going to go back and start playing around with this stuff.
It's pretty powerful for sure. And, you know, I'm really passionate in general, just talking about augmented reality and going now into artificial intelligence. These are all really important tools to see if they help. Just because there's a tool out there doesn't mean that it makes sense for you, especially when it goes into both of these types of topics. I'm here to constantly look at all of these different tools and figure out, are these things that we can, when we should consider bringing into our industry, or should we not? And that goes with tools as well as different types of pitching as well. And that's how I came across this new method of pitching, which we'll talk about. With me being 7 years in this industry, I'm constantly A/B testing different ways to pitch. I'm always doing that, constantly changing my scripts and whatnot. And I just so happened to run into something in January that was so beyond revolutionary. That's what Stephen is talking about, that has changed my entire pitching game. I've never had more success because of the method, the way that I'm pitching. So maybe I'll come back on for round 2.
Well, you know what I really learned, Courtney, is that words mean everything with regards to AI. So whether you're doing a graphic or you know, artwork or ChatGPT, and I talk to inventors all the time. They're like, they tell me what it is, and I type it into Google and I find it in 60 seconds. They're like, well, I didn't know it already existed. It's like, because they weren't using the right words. So that's very rudimentary searching. But they need to know the right words to use ChatGPT and to use and not everybody's good at that. But do you have any encouraging words for them, you know, to encouraging words to get better at that? If they're like, it's not working, it's like, can they look at a thesaurus? You were giving keywords on rendering words you use and stuff. Any advice there? Because I think a lot of people are going to struggle with that.
Yes, and that was the biggest struggle that I had, of me being very frustrated that this AI stuff is just not advanced enough. Like, I just can't use it until I really want to deep dive into YouTube and learn about prompt engineering. And it was me. It's me. I'm the problem. It's prompt engineering. It's me not knowing what to say. Again, that's why I want to emphasize garbage in, garbage out. You're gonna get bad results because you are giving it bad input. And that's what I love about AI, because it's really making you think about your life and how you're living it. If you do a bad job with something, you're probably going to get bad results from it. Just in general, you being in life, with your family, with your job and whatnot. And so I'm so glad you brought that up, Andrew, because when we talk about market research in general, a lot of people don't do a good enough job. Exactly as you said, it's already out there. A lot of the skills that you learn of how to do proper keyword searches in your regular inventing, licensing life, with the regular beginning steps for your product, can really go into learning how to properly prompt engineer. You're going to be so much better at trying to figure out what to put in those prompts if you really do a deep dive, and how to properly do your market research is definitely the most underutilized steps by far in licensing. People think they've got it. Most people do not. And it's hard to really explain that really intense emphasis on how important market research is, and how it will also help you with that prompt engineering. But honestly, Andrew, the best advice I could give is, one, you just got to get into it. You got to start learning as you're doing it. You need to start putting in prompts and seeing what it's coming up with, and trying to introspect why that's the case, and critically think again what is potentially going on. And then there's lots and lots of resources out there to get you deeper into how prompt engineering works.
Courtney, I've got one question before we end tonight.
Yeah.
We're all very busy, and I know you're really busy, right? Because I know you have a lot of students at InventRight. You have a lot of projects you're working on your own. So how do you find the time to do the type of research you just did tonight?
Wow. I'd say pure love. I enjoy what I do. And honestly, I would say if you are doing something that you're paid to do, like your regular job, would you do that job for free? And that is what made it big for me. Would I do my job for free? If the answer is no, I don't want to do real estate, but it's my job, or no, I don't want to, be a nanny. I don't want, okay, then you should not be doing it. And I will have to tell you, Stephen, that it took me probably a good 2.5 years to realize how important that one statement is. And I made a gigantic transformation in my life of only doing things that if I was doing it for free, would I do it? Absolutely. Absolutely. I would absolutely coach inventors for free. I mean, we're talking about this construct here, talking about, just what we're doing. That's, we're going to make that very clear there. But I love learning about these new technologies because this is how we get better in the industry, helping other people excel. This is so incredibly important, and no one's doing this. No one's making sure that we rise above as inventors and product developers. So that is gold there. We have to be better because that means more licensing deals. That means a happier inventing community. And there's nothing better to me in my mind than being able to have that conversation and figure out what really matters.
I say you should be the ambassador next May for what is it, National Inventors Month. You should be the ambassador, as far as I'm saying. That, Courtney, great job tonight, everybody. And I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. Okay.
Amazing job. Thank you so much, Courtney.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on. Everyone, greatly appreciate also seeing some friendly faces, and I'm sure I will see you guys soon. And if not, I'll see you guys on LinkedIn.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.